In Ainulindalë, the first part of the Silmarillion, J.R.R. Tolkien portrays the creation of his fictitious universe. It starts with God, introduced as Eru, the One, also called Ilúvatar. In his correspondence, Tolkien makes clear that he sees this God as our God, since there is only one God, and Tolkien's fictitious world is conceived of as our world in an indefinitely remote past. First, God creates the Ainur, angelic beings, whom he involves in his subsequent creation. He reveals a theme to them, and then appoints them to turn the theme into a great music, with the freedom to embellish it, each according to their individual gifts, yet in harmony with each other and led by the divine flame within them. As the music unfolds, its initial harmony is soon disturbed by Melkor, the most gifted and privileged of the Ainur. Instead of staying true to Ilúvatar's theme, he soon seeks to promote himself and increase his own power and glory, also to question God's wisdom, depart from God's decisions, and create things of his own, thus ultimately to usurp the position of God. The discord introduced by Melkor causes some of the other Ainur to falter in their own music, some even to follow him rather than the original purpose. Ilúvatar counters with a second and then a third theme, and a war of two opposing musics is played out until Ilúvatar commands it all to cease. He now reveals to the Ainur that their music has unfolded a world, as yet only existent in a vision, which is meant to be a habitation for new, other beings, the children of Ilúvatar, elves and men. Then he speaks this new world into being and sends his imperishable flame into the void to create Ada, the earth. While the other Ainur lovingly look forward to the children of Ilúvatar as new manifestations of hitherto unknown aspects of God, Melkor is envious of them, desires to dominate them and to possess the new world, Ea, earth, for himself. Here we can already see how a craving for power and the will to dominate others is at the root of all evil, as will become obvious in The Lord of the Rings. This fictitious cosmogony contains several spiritual truths, and one of them that I want to expound on a little bit is the principle of restoration. Melkor reminds of Satan. He tries to corrupt and destroy the harmony and beauty that is created and that has ultimately sprung from God's mind. Satan not only tries to destroy the world at large, but especially from the moment a human being is born, he tries to destroy their life, corrupt their soul, and destroy their relationship with God. This is done in many ways. Firstly, through temptation, trying to make us act wrongly, which then leads to shame and guilt. Secondly, by evil things being done to us, which leads to shame and false feelings of guilt. Thirdly, by inflicting physical and emotional suffering upon us, that makes us question God's goodness. So the enemy employs a huge range of means to make us feel guilty, inferior, not worthy of God, not loved by Him, not cared for, not valuable. Satan wants to corrupt the beauty we were created with in the image of God, and are gifts to create beauty ourselves in the image of God. In the text of Ainulindalë, this is exemplified with one of the elements, water, which is most loved by the Ainu Ulmo and falls under his province. Its original beauty is described, for instance, as the beauty of thy fountains and thy clear pools, and the music of the sea. Melkor's efforts to destroy this element are shown in bitter cold, to freeze and paralyze the water so that it cannot move anymore. It's frozen, immobilized, like dead. To transfer this to our lives, I will illustrate it with reference to PTSD as an example. Here, one part of someone's personality is arrested after a traumatic event. Like water turned to ice, your talents or social interaction or willingness to love and give are frozen. Another effort of Melkor's to corrupt and destroy water is by heat and fire. To dry up the water so that it evaporates, doesn't seem to exist anymore, is diffused everywhere and has no unity of its own anymore. To illustrate again with PTSD, you feel like your personality is destroyed, split into fragments. You are not whole any longer, have lost parts of yourself. This actually works both ways with evil deeds, with the person who is victimized and the perpetrator, as is shown, for instance, in Harry Potter with Voldemort or in Shakespeare's Macbeth. But look at what Ilúvatar does. He always takes up the theme Melkor has marred and cleanses it and changes it and reworks it and turns it into something even more wonderful than before. To quote from the text, "And it," meaning Melkor's music, "essayed to drown the other music by the violence of its voice, but it seemed that its most triumphant notes were taken by the other and woven into its own solemn pattern." Ilúvatar himself says, "Nor can any alter the music in my despite. For he that attempteth this shall prove but mine instrument in the devising of things more wonderful, which he himself hath not imagined." So, with the example of water, firstly, the fountains, pools, and oceans could not completely be frozen and not completely be dried up. Ilúvatar makes Ulmo aware of this in a one-on-one conversation. And Ilúvatar spoke to Ulmo and said, "Melkor hath bethought him of bitter cold immoderate, and yet hath not destroyed the beauty of thy fountains, nor of thy clear pools." To transfer this to our lives, it illustrates that there is a core of beauty within each person that is always protected, survives, cannot be completely spoiled. And this is the principle of preservation. Secondly, Ilúvatar invents forms of water under these changed conditions by which the water that is affected can be turned into something beautiful and beneficent too. Snow and frost under cold, clouds and mists under heat, and these will one day later fall onto the earth as rain. This is the principle of compensation. For every damage the enemy does to us, we are eventually given a compensation by God. We might not see it at first, but it is a principle always to take place. It's a manifold compensation, since it must exceed the suffering and be so beautiful and wonderful that it can console us, and that it is a restitution for the suffering. Otherwise, it wouldn't be justice, and God is just. So this is his way of working justice, to give us something greater and better, or at least as great and good, for everything we have lost, everything that has been stolen from us. Snowflakes and frost crystals have a unique beauty that no other form of water can display. Ilúvatar points this out to Ulmo. "Behold the snow and the cunning work of frost." Similarly, our first compensation for suffering is the way we experience closeness with God, as he heals us, shares and removes wounds and pain, restores our personality, or, on the other hand, extends forgiveness and sets right the wrongs we have done and mistakes we have made. Both let us experience his love and deepen our love for him. Iluvatar continues. Melkor hath devised heats and fire without restraint, and hath not dried up thy desire, nor utterly quelled the music of the sea. Behold rather the height and glory of the clouds, and the ever-changing mists, and listen to the fall of rain upon the earth. And in these clouds thou art drawn nearer to Manwe, thy friend, whom thou lovest. Clouds and mists are carried throughout the world, and when the time is ripe, their water is restored to a liquid form, and nourishes and blesses the earth and its creatures. Likewise, our second compensation is that in every area we have suffered in and been through, we have authority to be there for others, and God can use us to work healing in others' lives. In the Silmarillion, this social aspect is also shown in an increased friendship between Ulmo, the angel of the water, and Manwe, the angel of the air and winds, who draw closer together precisely through the formation of clouds. Ulmo's response shows that he is satisfied with the recompense he has been granted. Then Ulmo answered, "Truly, water is become now fairer than my heart imagined. Neither had my secret thought conceived the snowflake, nor in all my music was contained the falling of the rain. I will seek Manwe, that he and I may make melodies forever to thy delight." So, to sum up, God does not deny the pain and the severity of suffering. On the contrary, he suffers with every creature and is enraged at injustice. You can see that in the text too. But in the end, he takes what the enemy has intended for evil and turns it around for our good, and even multiplies it for the good of others.